Hey everyone! Ready for a deep dive into a question that's been around forever?
Oh, I know the one. Does size matter?
Yep, that's the one. But before anyone starts thinking this is just locker room talk, I want to be clear.
It's so much more than that.
Exactly. We're actually going to be looking at this essay
Does
called
size matter?
Exploring Women's Perspectives on Penis Size.
Yeah, it really gets into some interesting stuff.
And it's not just about, like, what people prefer physically, right?
Right. It's more about, like, the psychology, you know?
Psychology and the pressures from society.
And how all of that affects, well, what really matters.
In relationships.
Yeah, exactly, in relationships.
So in the essay, they start off by saying...
Well, they acknowledge, like, some women, they do find...
more pleasure.
More pleasure, yeah, with a larger size.
They talk about the sensation.
Stronger sensations. But it's interesting because even those women who say that...
they're quick to point out that...
there's more to it.
it's not just about that one thing.
Yeah, there are other things that are super important to them, too.
So, like, what kinds of things?
Well, you know, like, think about all the messages we get.
About size.
Yeah, about size, like how it's connected to being masculine.
And dominant.
Exactly, dominant. So for some women, those ideas they've heard, it might actually...
Make us more attracted, even if
they don't realize it.
Yeah.
Subconsciously.
It's like we're following a script.
A script we don't even know we're reading.
Exactly.
And there's this quote from the essay. One woman said, "While some women genuinely enjoy the physical experience, others admit that their preference is at least partially influenced by societal ideals or their partner's expectations." It's pretty insightful.
Wow. Yeah, it really shows you, like, even with something like this...
Preferences.
yeah, preferences, they can be because of all sorts of things.
Culture, personal experiences, all of it's mixed in.
Absolutely. And they also talk about how some women...
They actually prefer, like, comfort.
oh, yeah?
And they feel like a smaller or, like, average size is way easier.
Makes sense.
Yeah, because for some, a larger size can actually be
Uncomfortable.
uncomfortable, yeah, or even painful, especially depending on the position.
Yeah, if something hurts, that's
That kind of kills the mood.
for sure.
And this goes back to one of the big points they make in the essay,
What's that?
that for a lot of women, feeling good emotionally,
Like, really connected.
yeah, connected to your partner, that's way more important than size.
So it's not just about the physical part,
It's about how you feel with that person,
the whole picture.
feeling understood, cared for, like they really get you.
Makes you feel desired for, like, who you are.
Exactly. And that leads to something else interesting they talk about, challenging, like, traditional ideas about masculinity.
Oh, that's interesting. How does talking about size, like, challenge those ideas?
Well, for some women, when they say what they prefer, you know, bigger or smaller,
They're pushing back.
against all that pressure society puts on men.
Like, about their bodies.
Yeah, it's like saying, hey, there's more to a man than just this.
Right. It's almost like
Shifting the focus
away from just the physical stuff.
to the qualities that really matter in a relationship.
Like being kind, emotionally intelligent.
Respectful, how they treat their partner, all of that.
Yeah. It's saying a good relationship is more than just checking off boxes on some list.
Exactly. It's about finding someone who sees you for you, appreciates you, and connects with you on a deeper level. And sometimes, even though it can be awkward,
Talking about these things.
yeah, talking about size, it can actually help you get to that deeper connection.
It's all about communication.
Being honest, even when it's hard.
Challenging those old ideas that might not be good for us anymore.
Now, we can't talk about this without talking
The
about...
elephant in the room.
Yeah, or should I say, the part that gets way too much attention. The media.
I mean, think about it. We see ads, movies, even
Basically those.
that are always saying bigger is better.
And that can really mess with people's heads, both men and women.
It's like they're telling us how to feel, what to want.
It grounds out all the other important stuff about intimacy.
But the good news is things are changing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. People are talking more openly about all this.
Body positivity is becoming more mainstream.
People are starting to accept that different people like different things, and that's okay.
And social media, all those online communities,
They've helped a lot
they've given people a place to connect with others who feel the same way.
to share their experiences and not feel judged for having different preferences.
It's about realizing there's no one right way to experience intimacy.
Everyone's journey is unique.
Which actually leads us to what I think is one of the most powerful points in the essay. It's about how moving past this obsession with size can help us rediscover the things that truly matter in relationships. But before we get into that, I'm curious, What are you thinking so far? What's resonating with you the most as we unpack all of this?
It's amazing, like, how much we focus on just size. And forget about all the other stuff that's important for intimacy. The essay, it really points that out, that being so fixated on one thing.
It's like we can't see the forest for the trees.
Exactly. And puts so much pressure on everyone.
To try to fit into this one ideal.
Yeah, even if it doesn't feel right for them.
So how do we get away from that?
Well, the essay really stresses talking openly and honestly. Like, the more we talk about all this,
Our preferences.
yeah, our insecurities, our experiences,
The more we realize that there isn't just one right way.
for everyone
Yeah.
to experience intimacy, it's about, like, giving yourself permission
To figure out what works for you.
as an individual, as a couple, and to be okay with.
Yet everyone's different.
Yeah, that's what makes things interesting, right?
Totally. The essay also talks about how these conversations can help us move past size.
And focus on what actually matters in a relationship.
Okay, so what are those things?
It's about realizing that intimacy, it's not just physical, right? It's about connecting emotionally, having things in common,
Respecting each other.
understanding what the other person wants and needs, like,
Not just in the bedroom.
exactly, like in life.
And those are the things that really make a relationship strong.
Whether or not size is,
A factor.
a factor. When those other things are there,
Size kind of fades into the background.
exactly.
It's like shifting your thinking from what do I want to what do we want?
That's it. It becomes something you do together,
Discovering things together.
where both people feel good about saying what they need, what they want.
And that openness can bring you closer, can it?
Totally. It takes courage to have those conversations,
To be vulnerable,
but it's so worth it. It makes the relationship stronger.
more intimate.
And let's face it, it can lead to,
Some fun in the bedroom, too.
oh, for sure. When you're both comfortable and connected, like really on the same page,
The possibilities are endless.
it's about creating that safe space.
Where you can try new things.
Be playful, figure out what you both love.
And this all goes back to that idea of being satisfied,
Holistically,
looking at the whole picture.
intimacy is so much more than just one thing.
It's like all these different parts.
Physical, emotional, even intellectual, they all connect.
And when you get all those pieces working together,
That's when the magic happens.
it really is. This whole deep dive, it's been really eye-opening for me.
Mhm.
It's made me think differently about what intimacy means,
Yeah.
to be more open-minded, more understanding. What about you? How have you felt about this conversation? We've talked about so much in this deep dive.
Yeah, we
It feels like we've really gotten past all those assumptions about size.
And found something deeper, about what intimacy really means.
Exactly.
That's what I love about this essay. It brings you back to the important stuff,
Like what?
like communication, trust,
Being on the same page.
right? Knowing what each other needs, both physically and emotionally.
It's like it's giving us permission to let go of all those expectations from society.
And find something more real, more fulfilling.
I love that. So it's not just about size, it's about,
It's about realizing intimacy is different for everyone.
yeah,
There's no one right way to feel satisfied, and that's a good thing.
it is. That's what makes us all unique.
Exactly.
Dive into the shadows of human nature with the Lost Tapes podcast, where the truths hidden beneath our daily lives are brought to light. We uncover the layers of complex relationships, hidden emotions, and raw realities, from mental health to life's hardest truths. No topic is off limits, no story too raw. The Lost Tapes podcast is your invitation to understand the unspoken facets of life. Join us and let's explore life's hidden sides, one story at a time. Don't miss out on more hidden truths. Subscribe now to the Lost Tapes podcast. Stay curious. Stay informed. Click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to never miss an episode.
Penis size.
Mhm.
This is part 2. And, it's interesting. It's one of those things where you think you know something,
Right.
but a lot of the things we think we know about this topic are actually, like, not based on reality.
What's really fascinating is this stereotype is so deeply ingrained in our culture
Yeah.
that it's almost taken as common knowledge.
Right.
But when you actually look at the science,
Yeah.
the story is very different.
Yeah, and this deep dive, we're not just talking about anatomy here.
No.
We're really going to explore the stereotypes and how they impact people. How they impact attraction, relationships, self-esteem, like all of that.
These stereotypes, especially when we talk about, penis size and race, they have real-world consequences for people.
Yeah, okay, so let's just get right into it. Is there actually any link between race and penis size?
So Scientifically speaking, no. There is no link.
Okay.
Studies have shown repeatedly that race is not a determining factor when it comes to penis size. I mean, like many other physical traits,
Yeah.
penis size is a complex interplay of things. We're talking genetics, hormones, even nutrition
Right.
during those key developmental years.
So it's not as simple as saying, well, if you're this race, then.
Right, exactly. There's no like one size fits all when it comes to any racial or ethnic group.
Okay.
For instance, we know that there are genes like AR and SHBG.
Okay.
These genes play a role in penile development, and variations in those genes can occur across all populations.
Right.
So you can't just look at someone's race and assume anything about their anatomy.
Okay. So, I mean, it's almost like our brains are wired to, like, see patterns even when they don't exist.
Right.
But if science debunks this myth, why does it still persist? Like, why is this still a thing?
I think this is where the historical context gets really interesting and honestly a little uncomfortable.
Okay.
The article traces this stereotype back to colonial times, specifically ideologies that were prevalent during that era, where black men were often portrayed as hypersexual, animalistic.
Right. I've heard of that.
And it wasn't about accurate representation.
Yeah.
It was about dehumanizing and controlling black men.
Wow. I never really thought about it like that, but that makes sense.
Yeah,
It's really about power.
exactly. It's about power. And unfortunately, that portrayal, that dehumanizing portrayal,
Yeah.
has kind of seeped into our modern media,
Yeah.
into pop culture.
Like how black men are often depicted in, like, movies or pornography.
Unfortunately, yes, those portrayals often overemphasize certain physical attributes. And they end up playing right into that really outdated stereotype,
Yeah.
reinforcing it for a new generation.
It's like, yeah, that vicious cycle where fiction fuels perception.
Exactly. And this affects how people approach dating, relationships.
Right.
Some women might find themselves drawn to this stereotype, not necessarily because of genuine attraction,
Yeah.
but because of the myth
Okay.
surrounding it. And this is what we call fetishization,
Right.
where someone is viewed as an object of sexual desire based solely on a perceived racial characteristic.
So it's not about seeing the whole person. It's reducing them to just a stereotype.
Exactly. And that can be incredibly dehumanizing for the person on the receiving end.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to recognize the difference between genuine attraction, where you're interested in someone for their unique qualities, their personality,
All right.
and fetishization,
Yeah.
which objectifies and reduces someone to a caricature.
That's a really important distinction. And it makes you think, like, how much of our preferences, in quotes, are actually shaped by these harmful narratives that we've been exposed to our whole lives.
Absolutely. We often absorb these messages without even realizing it.
Yeah.
Just part of the water we swim in.
Right, exactly. Okay, so we've established that the stereotype is scientifically inaccurate.
Right.
And it's rooted in, like we said, harmful historical ideologies. But what about the impact on black men themselves?
Yeah.
How does this affect their self-esteem?
This is where the conversation gets really sensitive.
Yeah.
Imagine the pressure of feeling like you have to live up to an unrealistic expectation, a myth that's been perpetuated for centuries. That pressure can be immense.
I imagine it can lead to a lot of anxiety and insecurity, especially for young men.
Absolutely. The article actually shares a story about a young black man who went to extreme lengths to conform to this stereotype,
Wow.
even considering dangerous and unnecessary procedures.
Oh, wow. He felt like he had to measure up to this idealized image
Yeah,
that simply doesn't exist.
that's heartbreaking.
It is.
And it really highlights how deeply ingrained this stereotype is,
Yeah.
even within the black community itself.
Exactly. It's important to understand that these stereotypes don't just come from outside sources.
Right.
They can become internalized as well.
So how do we start dismantling these harmful narratives?
Yeah.
How can we as individuals begin to challenge them?
I think it starts with awareness,
Okay.
recognizing that these stereotypes exist, understanding their historical roots, and acknowledging the impact they have on individuals and relationships.
So it's about educating ourselves and being more mindful of the language we use and the assumptions that we make.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's also about having honest conversations about attraction and intimacy,
So,
recognizing that size is just one small aspect of a much larger picture.
right. And that true intimacy comes from a place of mutual respect and understanding and genuine connection. Absolutely. It's about valuing people for who they are, not for how they measure up to some arbitrary standard.
Well said. So we've debunked the myth, traced the history, talked about the impact. Where do we go from here?
Well, that's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll get into the role of media, the importance of communication,
Okay.
and how we can cultivate a more inclusive and body-positive culture.
This is already making me rethink a lot of things. I can't wait to see what else we uncover.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Dive into the shadows of human nature with the Lost Tapes podcast, where the truths hidden beneath our daily lives are brought to light. We uncover the layers of complex relationships, hidden emotions, and raw realities, from mental health to life's hardest truths. No topic is off limits, no story too raw. The Lost Tapes podcast is your invitation to understand the unspoken facets of life. Join us and let's explore life's hidden sides, one story at a time. Don't miss out on more hidden truths. Subscribe now to the Lost Tapes podcast. Stay curious. Stay informed. Click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to never miss an episode.
Picking up where we left off, it's amazing how media just like shapes how we see things,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to body image.
Yeah, it's like everywhere you look, movies, magazines,
Oh, yeah.
social media. It's just like
It's everywhere.
these idealized images everywhere.
Yeah.
No wonder it's so hard to separate reality from fiction.
And it gets even trickier, I think, when you start talking about pornography,
Right.
because the article points out that porn often gives a very distorted view of reality, particularly when it comes to penis size
Yeah.
and the portrayal of black men.
So it's not just seeing unrealistic sizes, it's also reinforcing that stereotype that we were talking about.
Exactly.
Linking size to race.
Yeah, you're exposed to this content that's specifically designed to heighten arousal.
Yeah.
And it often relies on the same tired tropes and exaggerations.
Right.
So it can really create this warped sense of what's normal.
Totally. I wonder how many people actually step back and think about what they're seeing.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the moment, but it's like, do you ever analyze the message that's being sent?
Right.
Even in something like porn?
I think it's crucial to be aware of that,
Yeah.
and I think we need to really start developing those media literacy skills.
Yeah.
Encourage critical thinking, especially when it comes to content that's designed to be, stimulating.
Right. And it's important to remember that not all media is created equal.
That's a great point.
There are creators out there that are trying to push back on those stereotypes and show more diverse and realistic bodies and relationships and all that.
I think it's really empowering to see that shift happening,
Totally.
and I think it speaks to the power of representation,
Yeah.
how it can really change how we see ourselves
Yeah.
and the world around us.
So how do we as individuals kind of navigate this whole media landscape
Yeah.
and make sure that we're not internalizing these harmful messages?
It can feel like an uphill battle sometimes.
It totally does.
But I think one of the most powerful tools we have is communication.
Okay.
Talking about this stuff
Yeah.
with partners, friends, family members, being open and honest about these issues can really make a difference.
So it's not just about what we consume, but also how we talk about it.
Think about it.
Yeah.
How often do we have these open and honest conversations
Right.
about body image insecurities, expectations?
Yeah. Not very often.
Still a little taboo.
It is.
And when you add something as sensitive as penis size to the mix, it can feel even harder to bring up.
Totally.
But I think having those conversations is so vital,
Yeah.
especially in intimate relationships.
Yeah.
It's about creating a space where you can both be vulnerable
Right.
and share your thoughts and feelings without judgment.
It's shifting the focus away from size and towards a more holistic understanding of what intimacy is.
Exactly. Remember that analogy from the article.
Yeah.
Judging a relationship solely on penis size
Yeah.
is like judging a delicious meal
Okay.
based on the size of one ingredient.
That one really stuck with me.
It's so true.
There's so much more to it, the
Right.
emotional connection, shared values, compatibility.
Humor, shared experiences,
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah, it's the whole picture.
And honestly, focusing just on size can actually create so much pressure and anxiety
Yeah.
for both people involved.
Right. Both the person who's worried about measuring up
Yes.
and the person who's overemphasizing that aspect.
It can really set everyone up for disappointment.
Yeah, totally. So what are some practical tips for having these conversations?
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's easier said than done.
Oh, for sure. It definitely takes practice. And a willingness to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
But, starting small can help.
Okay.
Maybe like share an article
Okay.
or a podcast episode like this one with your partner
Yeah.
and use it as a springboard for discussion.
That's a good idea.
Ask open-ended questions.
Okay.
Like, what are your thoughts on this? Or have you ever felt pressure because of this stereotype?
Yeah. It's about creating that safe space to just be honest
Exactly.
without being judged or rejected.
Yeah. And remember, communication is a two-way street.
Right.
It's not just about you expressing your own thoughts and feelings, but also actively listening to your partner,
Yeah.
trying to understand their perspective as well.
It's about fostering empathy and understanding,
Right.
even if you don't necessarily agree with everything.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, we're all trying to navigate this complex world together.
Okay, so we've talked about media, we've talked about the power of communication.
Yes.
What about the bigger picture?
Yeah.
How do we create a more inclusive and body-positive culture in general?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like we're trying to dismantle this massive structure that's been built over centuries.
It feels that way.
But I think it starts with each of us taking responsibility for our own actions and choices.
So what can we do?
We can be more mindful of the language we use, the media we consume, the messages we're sending to those around us.
It's recognizing that words have power,
They do.
and that even small actions can either perpetuate or dismantle these stereotypes.
Absolutely. It's about challenging those stereotypes whenever we see them,
Okay.
whether it's in casual conversation,
Yeah.
media portrayals, or even our own internal dialogues.
So it's about being like genuinely,
Yeah.
questioning those narratives and working to create a more inclusive, equitable world.
Exactly. And that includes being kind to ourselves and others.
Right.
We're all on this journey of self-discovery and acceptance.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that everyone is worthy of love and respect, regardless of their physical attributes.
That's such a good point. It brings us to body positivity.
Yeah.
How do we get away from this culture of comparison and just
Right.
embrace the diversity of human bodies?
It's about recognizing that there's no one ideal body type.
right.
Beauty comes in all shapes, sizes, colors. It's about celebrating our differences and appreciating the unique qualities that make each of us special.
It's about shifting that focus from external validation to internal self-acceptance.
Exactly.
Easier said than done, I know.
Oh, I know.
But it's a goal worth striving for.
I agree. It takes conscious effort
Yeah.
and a willingness to challenge those negative thoughts and beliefs that we've internalized over the years.
And it's also about surrounding yourself with positive influences, both online and offline, seeking out media that celebrates diversity.
Following body-positive activists and creators.
Yeah.
Engaging in conversations that uplift and empower.
It's about curating your own little
Absolutely.
media landscape.
The more we expose ourselves to diverse and positive representations of bodies and relationships,
Yeah.
the more we can challenge those narrow and limiting beauty standards.
That have been put on us, yeah.
Yeah,
So be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
We're all works in progress.
we are.
Body positivity is a journey,
It is.
not a destination.
Right, it's a lifelong process.
It's true because we're constantly bombarded with messages
Constantly.
telling us how we should look and who we should be.
It's a battle against the status quo.
It is, but with awareness communication,
Yeah.
a commitment to self-love,
Yeah,
we can start to chip away at those harmful stereotypes.
and create a more inclusive and body-positive world.
This has been such a great conversation.
It has.
What a journey.
It's been a journey.
I feel like I've learned so much.
You bet.
And I feel like I have a whole new perspective on this topic.
It's been a privilege to dive into this with you.
To our listeners,
Yeah.
we hope this deep dive has challenged your thinking
Yeah.
and inspired you to be more mindful of the stereotypes that you encounter in your own lives.
Remember, knowledge is power.
It is.
And together we can create a world where everyone feels seen, valued, and respected for who they truly are.
Absolutely. Let's continue these conversations, challenge the status quo, and embrace the diversity that makes humanity so unique.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Okay, so we've talked about media, communication, body positivity. It's a lot.
It is.
But I feel like we're missing one thing.
Okay.
We keep talking about these stereotypes. So where do we go from here? How do we actually break free?
I think that is the big question.
Yeah.
It's like we're trying to take down this huge thing that's been around forever. But I think it starts with recognizing how powerful our own thoughts are.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about it. Whenever you see a stereotype, you have a choice.
Okay.
You can just accept it.
Yeah.
Let it add to the problem, or you can challenge it.
So it's not just what we say to other people.
Right.
It's also those conversations we have with ourselves.
Exactly.
In our heads.
It's about noticing those automatic judgments that pop up
Right.
and then really choosing to question them.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's like being more mindful of how we think.
Right.
But this is hard.
Yeah.
We've been trained to think a certain way for so long. It's not easy to just change your mind like that.
Oh, absolutely. It takes effort.
Yeah.
It takes practice. But the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Okay.
It's like a muscle. The more you work it out, the stronger it gets.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So how do we actually do this? What are some things we can do to challenge those stereotypes?
One really good technique is to look for things that go against the stereotype.
Okay.
Like if you're always seeing stuff that supports a stereotype,
Yeah.
make a point of finding stuff that challenges it.
Okay.
Follow people who are all about diversity.
Right.
Read things that give you new perspectives.
Right.
Talk to people who broaden your horizons.
So it's like being more diverse in what we're watching and reading and who we're following and talking to.
Yeah. And don't just passively take it all in.
Okay.
Think about it critically.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, whose voice is being heard?
Mm-hmm.
What are the messages? What do I believe?
Wow. That's a really good way to look at things.
Yeah.
It's like being a smarter consumer,
Yeah.
really thinking about what you're letting into your head.
Exactly.
But what about when you see a stereotype just like in everyday life? What do you do then?
That's when you got to be brave.
Okay.
Sometimes you got to speak up.
Yeah.
If you hear someone making a bad joke or saying something that's just not true,
Mm-hmm.
it might be uncomfortable at first, but it can really make a difference.
Don't let it slide by.
Right. You don't have to be an expert on everything to speak up. Sometimes just saying, hey, that's not cool, or I don't agree with that, is enough
Yeah.
to make someone think twice.
It's like starting a chain reaction.
Yeah. Starting with your own friends and family.
But not everyone is going to be open to these conversations.
That's true.
What do you do when someone just doesn't want to hear it?
You're right. Not everyone's ready to have their beliefs challenged.
Yeah.
You got to pick your battles.
Right.
Sometimes it's best to just walk away.
And save your energy.
Exactly. And change takes time.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to fix this overnight.
Yeah. It's a process.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
I like that.
And there will be setbacks.
Yeah.
But every step we take,
Yeah.
every conversation, every challenge brings us closer to a better world.
And celebrate the little wins.
Yes.
Every time we challenge a stereotype, every time we speak up, every time we embrace diversity,
That all adds up.
we're making things better.
We are.
This has been such a great conversation.
It has.
It really has. I feel like my eyes have been opened. I see things in a whole new way now.
It's been a real privilege to dive into this with you.
To our listeners, we hope this deep dive has challenged you
Yeah.
and inspired you to be more aware of stereotypes in your own life.
Remember, knowledge is power.
It is.
And we can make a world where everyone feels seen and valued for who they are.
Absolutely. Let's keep talking about this. Let's challenge the way things are and celebrate the diversity that makes us human.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.